The bed placement rule grandparents followed to avoid heat loss is something a lot of folks today might not even think about. Cold houses were once the norm, not the exception. Before central heating, insulation standards, and sealed windows, warmth was managed by behavior as much as by fuel. One of the quiet disciplines passed down through households was bed placement. It was not decorative, not sentimental, and not accidental. It was a deliberate response to physics, drafts, and the realities of fuel scarcity. What follows is a practical, historically grounded guide to how beds were positioned to conserve heat, why it worked, and how the same rule can still be applied today in modern homes, cabins, and off-grid shelters. Beds were placed against interior walls, never exterior ones. The first rule was simple and rarely broken. Beds were set against interior walls that shared heat with other rooms. Exterior walls were avoided because they acted as cold sinks, drawing warmth out of the body through conduction. Stone, brick, and early timber walls held cold long after sunset, especially in winter. A bed pressed against such a surface lost heat all night, no matter how many blankets were piled on top. In practice, this meant bedrooms were arranged so the headboard touched a wall backing onto a hallway, stairwell, pantry, or another bedroom. In smaller homes, beds were often rotated 90 degrees from what modern layouts would suggest, sacrificing symmetry for warmth. Today, this same principle applies in older houses, basements, cabins, and trailers. If your bed backs onto an outside wall, shifting it even a foot away or reorienting it to an interior partition reduces overnight heat loss noticeably. The head of the bed faced away from prevailing drafts. Older homes leaked air by design, chimneys pulled cold air inward, windows rattled, and doors breathed. Grandparents positioned the head of the bed away from doors, windows, and known draft paths. The body loses heat fastest through the head and upper torso, and a steady cold airflow at pillow level could undo layers of bedding. Bedrooms were evaluated at night, not during the day. Folks paid close attention to where candle flames flickered, or where curtains moved just a bit. The bed went where the air was still. In a modern context, this means, avoiding alignment with doorways, HVAC returns, poorly sealed windows, or vents that cycle cold air overnight. Even in heated homes, airflow across the face lowers perceived temperature and disrupts sleep, increasing heat demand. Beds were raised off the floor to escape cold pooling, cold air sinks. This was understood long before it was ever explained with science. Beds were lifted on frames, bricks, or wooden blocks to elevate sleepers above the coldest air layer. In cottages and farmhouses with stone floors, sleeping directly on a low cot or mattress meant constant exposure to cold pooling at floor level. This practice remains relevant in garages converted to living space cabins with slab floors and emergency shelters. Raising a bed by even 8 inches changes the thermal experience. Heat stays closer to the body and drafts moving along the floor no longer rob warmth. This is especially critical in tense and temporary structures where ground chill is really severe. Beds avoided shared walls with chimneys unless deliberately used. Chimney walls were tricky, If a chimney was active, beds were placed nearby to benefit from residual warmth stored in the masonry. But if the chimney was inactive, it became a cold shaft pulling air downward. Experienced households knew the difference, and they adjusted seasonally. In winter, a working hearth meant a warm wall for hours after the fire died. Beds placed parallel to that wall absorbed and reflected heat. In summer or in unused rooms, the same wall was avoided. Today, this translates to understanding thermal mass. Walls backing onto active heat sources can be assets, but walls tied to unused flues or metal vent stacks often act as heat drains. Corners were used deliberately, not randomly. Corners get a bad reputation now, but historically they were favored when chosen correctly. A bed tucked into an interior corner reduced exposed surface area. Two walls blocked cross drafts and heat radiated back toward the sleeper. The mistake was using exterior corners, which combined two cold surfaces and amplified heat loss. Applied correctly, corner placement still works. An interior corner with solid walls creates a microclimate that holds warmth. Adding a heavy headboard or wall hanging increases this effect by reducing radiant heat loss. This was standard practice in Northern Europe and colonial America, especially in one-room dwellings. Distance from windows mattered more than blanket thickness. Grandparents understood that windows were weak points, no matter how small. Beds were never placed under windows in winter. Glass radiates cold inward, and even well-covered windows leak heat downward at night. The cold air falls directly onto the sleeper, compressing blankets and lowering insulation value. Modern double glazing improves this but does not eliminate the effect. If your bed sits beneath a window, moving it laterally or placing the headboard on a solid wall reduces nighttime heat loss more effectively than adding another comforter. Shared sleeping walls were used to stack heat. In multi-room homes, bedrooms were clustered and beds were aligned back-to-back through walls, stacking body heat. This was common in row houses, farmhouses, and boarding homes. Heat from one sleeping space supported the next. This principle applies today in off-grid living and energy-conscious design. Bedrooms placed centrally, sharing walls, stay warmer with less input. If heating is limited, closing off unused perimeter rooms and sleeping near the home's core follows the same logic. You do not need to rebuild or live like it is 1890. Walk your bedroom at night. Feel for cold walls, drafts, and airflow. Move the bed so the headboard rests on an interior wall. Raise the frame if the floor is cold. Keep distance from windows and doors. If necessary, place a solid barrier like a bookcase or wooden headboard between the bed and a cold surface to reduce radiant loss. For preppers and survivalists, this knowledge matters during power outages and fuel shortages. Proper bed placement can mean the difference between sleeping comfortably at 40 degrees or shivering through the night. It reduces calorie burn, conserves fuel, and improves recovery. This is not nostalgia. It is applied thermal discipline. This rule endured because it worked, not because it was tradition. Bed placement was a form of energy management refined over generations who could not afford waste. If this kind of grounded, usable history matters to you, subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles, share this guide with others who take preparedness and historical knowledge seriously, and keep these lessons alive by putting them to use.